So in this video tutorial, what we want to do is use ArcScene. You can bring up ArcScene from your Start Programs menu. And when you come in, you want to just make a blank scene here. It's very similar to the layout you're familiar with on ArcMap. And what we're going to do is we're going to add some data in. And just so things move along pretty quickly, what we'll bring in is just a 30-meter DEM of the area. If I add that in, it should load up pretty quickly. You'll notice that I've got this nice 3D view here, but everything is flat. And so if I want to fix that, what I need to do is go to the property of the layer that I just added and change it from base heights of having no elevation values to having those from a particular surface. The surface, of course, that we want to elevate those by is the very surface that we added, which was the 30-meter DEM. And so if I click OK, it's going to regenerate that, and now I can see that it has, if I zoom in here, it has used those to elevate the layer, and now I have this nice 3D view. Okay, so next step, we can get a little fancier with this. If we come back into here, there's some things that we can do. On the rendering, we can shade the features relative to the light position. And then on the symbology, let's see here. Under the symbology, we can use a hill shade effect. And then we may want to change this to, one of the more elevation looking color ramps that we've used in the past. And so doing that, this thing starts to look a lot better. If we want to exaggerate the vertical scale of this to make the mountains pop out a little bit more, it's not something we have to do as much in the state of Utah, simply because we have pretty good relief around here. But if we're working in flatter areas, this can be quite helpful. And actually, they moved it. It's still within the layer properties. If we look at this factor to convert layer elevations to scene units, let's try 3 just for kicks. Apply that, and then we can see that the mountains certainly look a lot steeper. Maybe that's a little too exaggerated. If instead we use something like 1.5, that might be enough just to make the mountains look a little bit more impressive. And so now what we need to do is make sure we're looking at the right area. So we should bring in our big cottonwood watershed. And I add that layer, and I don't see it right off the bat. Well, the reason I don't see it is because it's physically underneath. I haven't elevated that layer. So I need to elevate that layer. And so I'm going to the properties of this shapefile, and I want to switch to the base heights layer, and I want to use that so it's floating on a custom surface. And I'm going to make sure I use the same DEM. I should also do the 1.5. And if I apply this, okay, turn back on my DEM, now I can see it doesn't look very good. If I zoom to just that layer, it doesn't look, it's just sort of, we need to change the symbology so it looks a little bit nicer. And there's a couple of things that we can do. We can go to our symbology, and maybe what we'll do is we'll just have a hollow outline here in red. And now we can see that watershed pretty nicely. If we wanted to have something where we did have a fill color on it, we could do the sort of stuff that we've done in the past, where we make it transparent, and so that we can see underneath that. But notice how it's connecting these lines across the top of the watershed. So when I look at this thing, I see these horrible lines that are going from ridge to ridge. Okay, the reason it's doing that is because it's getting the elevation values just at the perimeter. So if I wanted this to look like a watershed that didn't have this bathtub rim across it, what I would have to do is I'd have to convert this polygon to a raster. I'd bring the raster in, I'd elevate, and it would all be one number for the raster, so I could represent it all as one color, and then I would elevate that to the DEM just like we did, and then it would show up like we want it to. But for now, it's going to be easiest for us to just change that symbology back to having no fill, and then we can see the watershed. Okay, and so some of the other things that you can do in ArcScene, instead of using the DEM itself and just elevating the DEM, we could elevate other layers. So we could for example, add in those contours that we produced. That we will produce, I'm sorry, in the next step in task 2. And so if I wanted to bring those in, for example, I'm not suggesting you have to do this, but as an example, we could bring in these contours. I'm going to bring them in. Of course, I don't see them yet. I have to go and find the base heights layer and then elevate these in the same way that we have the others. So when those come in, it's actually a little bit overwhelming, and it may even be easier to look at without the DEM on. But you can see those. You can see those contours. It does look better when you zoom in a little bit, and you can start looking at this in a 3D view. So there's all sorts of stuff you can do. One of the problems with this 3D scene is the larger the rasters that you load into it, the more it struggles. You can drape imagery over your terrains as well. So you could, if you downloaded some imagery from the Utah GIS portal, you could come and bring that in and drape that over. There's all sorts of things that you can do. You can be a bird and fly around and start flying into the canyon, for example, and then crash into the mountain. So go ahead and have some fun with this, but remember, all you have to do is create minimally one 3D view of the watershed, and you can choose whatever data you want to do that from. If you want to do more, that's totally up to you.